Holy, 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 Divine Source, Great Spirit, we call on you this day. We're here basking in your grace and your love. We thank you for speaking through us, guiding us, and helping to bring forth the messages and the healing that's most helpful for one and all. And so it is. Welcome to Talking Spirit. This is episode 11. And at one point I looked at 11:11 this morning. So welcome. My name is Yuta and I'm here with my friend Elizabeth. Greetings, everyone. So again, we've been sitting in a prayer of which topic the Spirit wants us to communicate. And there's always a lot of stuff floating around and many possibilities. And the one that felt most like it clicked is the topic of compromise and how compromise can play out in our lives, and kind of how, the mind has a very big temptation to go into compromise in relationships or at your work or really any place, just so it doesn't have to face the light in the mind. And just before we sat down, I actually thought, no wonder there's so much compromise. This whole world was made from one big compromise and almost like a bargain of the mind with itself to hide away. I'll hide away so just so I don't get punished by God for choosing wrongly, thinking wrongly that I could separate. So, as always, we're just in a prayer to see how this topic wants to be addressed through us, and we're grateful you're here for the ride. The thing that came to mind as you were opening up, it's so often not what I think is going to show up in my mind, when we get started, but was this sort of idea of, as we go on the spiritual journey, you might say, it's this constant having to look at your mind and having to look at what you're believing. And there's this conversation about integrity. What's integrity for you in any given moment? And, that's kind of a fumbling through the dark kind of experience for me. It has been, because this world is so full of distortion and so full of lies. Like you said, like it started out of this profound lie and really weird choice, it seems. And it's just been one thing after another. And we've referenced watching this show called The Ozark a number of times in our talk so far, because it's been such an amazing demonstration of the insanity and this constant overriding at the next level, this constant, like you think to yourself as the viewer, oh, they must be bottoming out now. Like it must be enough for them, that they've had enough, that they've just sold themselves down the river one more time, not in terms of the world, but in terms of their own sense of integrity. Over and over and over again, they just sell themselves out. And, we go on the spiritual journey, it's about getting right with ourselves and getting right with our own mind and getting right with what is, flowing forth moment by moment internally relative to our beliefs, relative to ideas of guilt and shame and regret. And there's just this constant invitation to look at ourselves, to get right with ourselves. And, it's a difficult journey, which is why many people don't do it and why we've got a world that, in any moment you can go anywhere and look at how much shit shoveling is happening. It's on the news, it's on Facebook, I'm right, you're wrong, and we just play these little war games on different, seeming playgrounds. But what it's really saying is, I don't want to face this stuff within myself. And the whole spiritual journey is about not compromising. it's this constant walk of, come on back in. Let's take another look. Let's go a little deeper. So, the word integrity was showing up, and the idea of integrity, this getting right in ourselves, is kind of the whole conversation of, are you going to compromise or not within your mind? Not compromise with the world and like, oh, well, let's find a happy place of, getting along. No, compromise as in you've got the sword of truth in your hand with the spirit, and you're going to face thing after thing, seeming belief and idea and memory and way of being in the world, and use it judiciously to really be completely freed. It's a really fierce, like I'm seeing the samurai right now. Really fierce. Not using it to do harm to others, but using it to keep yourself from being bound.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what would be the reason to compromise? What is the logic in the mind that tells you, oh, it's good to hold back right now, or it's good to keep this to yourself? I know for myself, I always have to come back to myself because I can really only talk about my own experience, and I know that anytime I've compromised is because I was scared of my own certainty. Because what if the one who was showing up in front of me that I've trusted somehow in this moment actually was put there not to trust, so that I could trust in my own inner voice, which wanted to become more firmly established in my mind and trusted more deeply. And the fear that comes up in those situations would oftentimes make me doubt myself, and I would really get more and more confused about what I was hearing, what was happening. And there was such a big dissonance that created. And I think maybe that's why I thought of the elevator scene in the movie Revolver, where he's in there and that voice in his mind is so convincing and loud. It sounds logical, right? Like he's afraid of being in elevators. So it seems logical that your mind would say, well, don't go in it. You're going to die. If you don't know any better, that sounds like perfectly good logic. But as we go down this path, that kind of logic starts to make less and less sense and feel less and less right, because it's keeping us stuck. So that building that trust in your own inner voice is so important, as you walk this path of non-compromise, because it's like your compass. We all have this inner compass, and let's put aside compromising with other people, but what feels worse usually to us is compromising in our own minds when we know we should go a certain direction, or make certain adjustments in our lives, and we don't for whatever reason. Those compromises can really be really destructive in our minds. And that show is the Ozarks. Really shows how crazy and messy things get when you stack up all of these compromises on top of each other, thinking you're going in the right direction. It really is destructive. Like they're just going crazier and crazier.
What's interesting is that the brother, the so-called crazy brother, shows up in the series, kind of well into the series.
The bipolar one.
And their children have said, don't you guys realize how nuts this is? And they've raised up the issue of, what are you doing, parents? How are you selling yourselves, down the river here, and including us in it? And then they all kind of get acclimated to this new way of being, this distorted way of showing up in the world. And then the brother shows up, the so-called mentally ill brother, and he's completely losing his mind because of the disconnect of no integrity whatsoever. And he's screaming, like, how can you not be totally devastated by what you're doing? And I've been there so many times of speaking for some degree of sanity and raising up some issues and, being given a reflection, oh, you're crazy, that's nuts. And I spent a lot of years of my life compromising my own integrity. There's a lot of talk about being my authentic self. And there's a lot of that kind of catchword and phrase nowadays. And often people, no offense if you're one that uses it, but often people are saying, my ego wants more room to have the stage. Rather than true authenticity, which is being in your total divine alignment. That's your authentic self. Your divine self is actually your authentic self. And if you're coming from that place, great. But if you're coming from the personality wanting to say, oh, my behavior's me authentically, well, it's a little different. So this brother is on a rant and really trying to be in his proper alignment with himself. And he's got all these reflections around him just saying, no, you're crazy, and we want to just keep operating the way that we want to keep operating. And it's this really deep, deep, deep message about, are you going to listen to your heart and to what you know is authentically right, like really deeply right for you. And sometimes you're going to face reflections that are going to say, lock them up in the psych ward. Often people who are suffering from mental illnesses are suffering because of this disconnect in the world projected out, and you see it. Those of us that are, you might call sensitive, it is too much for us, this world, with these kinds of lies, and so if you want to live a life of non-compromise within yourself, you often have to speak words and deliver messages that are not going to necessarily be well received, right? I mean, look at Jesus. It's not that we're comparing our journeys to Jesus, but we're just saying, he's a really glaring example of somebody who knew what the message was to deliver and wasn't going to compromise. And, as we were starting this, I was thinking back to when my grandmother, my Nana, died. And it's a long story, but when we got to this service where nobody was supposed to speak because that was a choice made by some of the family members, which was against kind of the Quaker tradition of everybody being given a chance to share about the person. It was a different format. And I kept hearing my grandmother say, please tell them how much I loved them, and please tell them how my life was everything because of their meaning in my heart. That they were that the people that are sitting in the church were everything to me. And I didn't stand up and speak for her. And it still is a little heartbreak in my heart that I didn't authentically listen and deliver the message because I was in a place of they're going to say, oh, who does she think she is? What is she doing standing up in the middle? We're supposed to listen to the pastor and not the family. It was one of those moments where I compromised on what I knew, and it still haunts me a little bit. I mean, I've made right with my Nana over and over again about this, but it showed up a couple days ago in my mind as still a regret. We're talking about trying to have these things in our minds and our hearts healed, these emotions, these thoughts, these beliefs. And if we don't authentically, like at the beginning of the recording here, I heard holy, holy, holy as that needed to be my opening. My heart started to race. It was like I wasn't comfortable with that. I knew I had to do it. You had an experience like that the other day with a message in one of these talks where you're like, I knew I had to deliver it. I was scared to do it. This is the authentic path, is getting in that channel, in that alignment and saying, yep, I'll do your will. And sometimes it might look a little silly or look a little weird to other people or to ourselves. We may have that judgment, but it's like, which way do you want to go? Do you want the world's comforts, or do you want the true, authentic alignment that's going to leave you being able to sleep at night and being peaceful in your mind?
Yeah, I love some of the examples you just shared because, the other thing that we were talking about is the kind of this idea of the cult of the world. And, there are so many things that seem so normal in this world, collectively, generally speaking. So many things seem so normal. Like, I think things are changing a bit. Especially like in the younger generations now, there's a lot of that stuff already falling away. But, like there's still in the mind this idea that, if you're a woman, well, don't you want to have kids at some point? And, don't you want to have your career too and a husband? And, all of these things, like you go to school, you go to college, you have your career, you make the money. And then at some point you have the house and the car and maybe another car. And maybe, you get so rich that you can have 3 kids instead of just 2 or 1. Like, there's so much in this world that's still expected. And people get scared of, like, family members ending up in cults, not realizing they're already in one. Like, they've been living in a cult when they got here. You're automatically in a cult when you arrive in this world. So it's not really surprising that when we step out of the normal, quote unquote, thinking, that there's going to be big reactions for most people in their lives. I know when I made the decision to join the spiritual community, I was working at a chiropractor's office, and it was really a lovely job, and the people were really nice, and there was a sense of community working there. But when I told my boss that I was going to be leaving indefinitely, he took it so personally. And I think unfriended me on Facebook and just would not talk to me. It was from that point on, the connection was completely severed. Not from my end, but it was like, oh, well, you're not playing my game now? Yeah. It wasn't pleasant.
I remember when I got the guidance to leave my work. I'd had many years with the company and moving up the ladder and wonderful possibilities. And I had to go to the, VP of planning, for my division. And, he asked what I was going to do. And I said, well, I'm moving into a spiritual community that teaches, yoga and Vedanta. And he looked at me with such a smirk on his face. And I saw it. He thought, she's absolutely nuts. Mm-hmm. She's out of her mind. Mm-hmm. And, I've faced it over and over again. I can read people's minds, right? What's wrong with her? She's not married. What's wrong with her? She doesn't have kids. What's wrong with her, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, the programming is so thick, but we have to be in that place of integrity within ourselves. Mm-hmm. And it's not that it's been easy. It's not that it's been like, oh, well, I just decided I'm going to do it, and so now all that stuff is a non-issue. No, I had to sit over and over again and look at, oh, do I care that I didn't have a family? What do I really feel about that? Mm-hmm. How's that really sitting with me? Is that really a choice that I, seem to get in alignment with, that was right for me? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Utah was in a spiritual community that had lots of people that were guided to leave children behind, mm-hmm. leave marriages, quote unquote. Yeah. Somebody's going to adopt them, like the parents of the person was going to adopt them, whatever it was. It's like the spirit had the plan for that person that mm-hmm. was being seemingly impacted by it. But, if you don't understand the deep call and what that might look like, it can be easy to think that people are out of their minds. But it's like once upon a time, we were talking about this the other day, once upon a time, and in some countries it's still the case, it was well supported to follow your calling spiritually.
It was honorable.
It was honorable.
Like, it was a thing that not everybody was called to do, and when you were...
You were supported.
It was a big deal.
Yeah. You might have had family that was upset because they thought, the son was supposed to take over the farm, or the daughter was going to bear grandchildren or whatever. It's not that everybody was always like, oh, totally 100%. But there was an understanding that there's a need in the mind to have people that are focused mm-hmm. on their calling spiritually. We're all needed. But, it's, it's sort of interesting to think often, I've gotten many times the why don't you get a job kind of message.
Yeah.
If you had any idea how my heart and my mind have worked with the spirit to support awakening, you might not have that position anymore. I don't know. But it's like I've been doing a job, deep, hard job for many years. Not as aren't I great, but just as it's a contribution when we turn within and away from the world. It's actually not a negative. It's actually a positive, because then we can actually be truly helpful. But again, you face the desire to go to sleep all the time to compromise moment by moment. Oh, spirit, maybe tomorrow. Maybe I'll do that for you tomorrow.
Oh, I'm too tired today.
Yeah.
Can I just hang out for the day? Yeah.
But we were getting this, I don't know if I already said it, this I heard as we were kind of getting in the vortex within the last couple of hours. I was hearing the sacred cows. We all have sacred cows potentially in our minds of again, I'll give up X, Y, or Z belief or opinion or position, but not this one. And
don't come looking here, spirit. This is mine.
We were talking about Revolver.
Yeah, Revolver, and also I heard Huckabees, because the main character hires these two existential detectives, right? Yeah. If you haven't seen that movie, please just watch it. It's so good. And it's lighthearted, but there's so much depth in it too. Yeah. But anyway, he hires them and immediately gives them conditions. Well, you can come to whatever, you can look at all of my life, but just don't come to my work. It's too delicate right now. It's too sensitive. Don't come to my work. And these are the compromises that we make sometimes unconsciously with the spirit all the time. I'll be your hands, but I still want to be a mom too, and coddle my family. Versus some of the people that I spent time with in the spiritual community, they were not called to be moms any longer. That was a phase that they were meant to bring children in, apparently, because that's what happened. And then there was an unwinding period, sometimes over many, many years, and going back and forth, coming into community, going back home, spending time with family, just unwinding from the concept of I'm a mom versus you're the Christ, or you're the whole universe, basically, these little concepts that we want to compromise ourselves into, just so we don't have to be the big juju that we really are meant to, be in this world. So, yeah, the sacred cows, what are the things we don't want to examine with the spirit?
Or that we don't want to be for spirit.
Oh, yeah.
I was just having this conversation I had with somebody from my childhood. I told Yuta about it, that at one point I was saying to the guy, get your head out of your ass. And I said it repeatedly. The conversation got really direct and really kind of, from my personality, harsh. And then he comes back after and he says, oh, this was perfect. And it turns out this was a message his father gave him at a major turning point in his life. And it got his attention, what I was saying. So I was just in the channel because that was the request for me to be in service to this person. So I was with the spirit receiving the messages that I needed to receive for this person to get a message delivered through me, right? But if I had been trying to filter it and compromising, oh, that's not nice to say. If I had had a judgment and an opinion about myself and how I was being used, I would have gone into compromise 100%. If I'd been in the, I want to be a nice person, or I want to be the people pleaser that says, oh yeah, too bad for you, or whatever. No, I've learned that I get used to be sometimes a messenger with a kind of harsh, blunt object sometimes, and I'm willing to go there because I know I've seen it enough now that the spirit knows what it's doing. I have no idea. Yeah. But, again, if we're not willing to be used the way the spirit wants to use us, we're not going to be truly helpful. I've seen it over and over and over again.
Yeah, well, I think in those moments when we're actually called to step up and really speak honestly and really truly authentically in the way you described it earlier, with what authenticity actually means, I think it can really feel like, and I've seen this for myself, it almost feels like you're making a judgment, and that's why things are coming or wanting to come through in a kind of harsh way. It feels like you're actually judging the situation when, your spiritual path might want to say, like, oh, well, none of this actually matters. So however this goes is totally fine, which is really, that's just not the way it actually works. Ultimately, sure, nothing that you see has any meaning at all. All the situations, none of them actually matter. And yet, the way the spirit works with us in our minds is by using all the specific situations that are showing up, all the relationships that show up in front of us, everything, to let go of whatever judgments are actually in the mind. So, yeah, it can be really, really tricky in those situations. And fear will tell you, oh no, just keep quiet. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, I was just seeing from the Matrix where they're going in to try to find where Neo and Trinity are plugged in. They're in their little pods and they've got all these little tentacles attached to them, like in these crucial parts of their being. And they've got to like get past whatever they're called, the Sentinels or whatever they're called, right? To find them where they're like stuck in a little pod where they're completely taken offline and just being used as a life force for the machine, It's like, it's pretty dramatic, the depth of asleepness that we have and the different issues that are there that we have been compromising on for potentially eons. And back to Revolver, again, if you haven't seen that movie, brilliant, powerful, amazing, just one of my absolute, maybe it's my favorite. I'm not sure. It could be.
I kind of can't believe sometimes that movie made it out.
I know. It's unbelievable. And so here's this guy, with his sacred cows of money, power, resentment, retribution. It's like, these four really incredible elements. And the spirit is saying to that person, over and over and over again, this is the way out. And you got to keep going with our plan for how we're going to get you out. And you watch him fight himself with these sacred cows moment by moment. And it's so brilliantly depicted, the mental mind effery that goes on, the struggle between the good one and the bad one, the light and the dark, the angel and the demon. It's like you see them on the main character's shoulders the whole movie. It's so well depicted. He wants to compromise every moment. Understandably, when you watch it, it's like, oh yeah, I've been there. Got some resentments. Yeah, a little revenge. Sure, right? So the world will tell you, Jake's got the right idea in terms of, what he wants to do to this seeming bad guy in his life. And yet the spirit is like, yeah, not so much.
And boy, the reaction that he gets when he's actually just in this inner stillness with the one that he, previously wanted to, enact some of revenge on. That character just loses it. It brought up so much fear, right? When you're not met with what you expected, and you just get love instead.
Yeah, when he finally finds the healing after having to hand over the sacred cow of money, the spirit tells him at the beginning he's going to have to give away every penny of his money, and often hand it on to people that he'd rather not hand it on to. You watch him just being taken down a peg in a good way over and over again. And by the end, it's still a struggle for him, but he's in it. He's in his alignment with his authentic self to go for the healing. And yeah, the so-called bad guy is brought to a shaking little
Tears.
Yeah.
Tears, little boy crying, basically. Yeah.
Can't comprehend what's just happened.
No.
Thinks that there must be something else going on that's really like, It's brilliant. It's a brilliant movie about really showing this moment by moment choice. Are you going to go for getting out, or are you just going to stay in this mess of a life and see it?
Yeah, it's like a daily examination of what am I doing? Like, I know you sometimes tell people, like, every hour you set yourself an alarm for every hour. What's the prayer?
Oh, it can be any number of things, but usually, what would you have me do?
Right.
What's up? What do I need to do?
What am I supposed to be doing right now? Every hour.
Just to bring the mind back to, like, oh my gosh, I'm not here to be a mom. I'm not here to be an employee. I'm not here to even be a human being. I'm not here to be cleaning my house or making money. I'm actually here to learn how to listen to spirit every moment so that I can be brought out of the world entirely and back into my right state of mind. What would you have me do? What do I need to know? What do I need to see? Where do I need to be? Just that acknowledgement of, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I really don't know what's right for me in any moment. That's a real place of no compromise, is seeing, oh, I may have been educated. I may have had a seemingly successful life in the world's terms. I have no idea how to heal my own mind and how to get out of this world. And not out of this world as, oh, it's a bad place, get out of this world. No, get in my total divine alignment. That's the only place I ever feel good, is when I'm in my alignment.
Yeah, and it's so amazing, right? Because when, I know in those moments of compromise, like, it seems like there is so much packed into those scenarios. Like, I have to compromise or else.
Yeah.
But when you go the other direction and you just go with, no, I actually have to go towards this and walk through the discomfort right now. Like, my heart's pounding and I can't help myself. Like, one of the things I really like about the brother character in the Ozark is that he literally cannot compromise because he's all emotion. So it just, whatever comes up, it's just right there. He can't even hide it
filter
at all.
Yeah.
It just comes out to the, extreme, basically. And I love that because he is kind of forced into being completely authentic. And, most of us feel like we can sort of control and hide whatever reaction is actually naturally occurring, and that leads to compromise. So when when you're in those situations and the heart's starting to pound, that's your sign to actually go in that and say that thing or do that thing that you're scared of saying or doing right now. And the reward is a real sense of security and connection and, wow, oh my God, I could do this. Like, it's not the reward you get from being in compromise of, oh yeah, I guess I'm safe for now, but, what if somebody might find out I'm compromising or whatever, like, that's not where any of us really want to be. It's just, constant exploration and open-mindedness to seeing, oh, maybe I do have some other things tucked away. I've worked on this, and I've exposed this and this to the spirit, but maybe there's some stuff under my bed that I'd rather keep there still. And can I maybe make a, little step towards that here and there?
Yeah, I was just seeing this friend that I have that we've had various iterations of how our relationship looked. For a time, we were so-called partners, and we started a business together, and it's been 16, 17 years later, and we had this thing we did called Nap Time News, where we would just lay down on the bed, so there was a sense of vulnerability and equality, like, that just sort of put us in a different state of mind. And we would just take turns, data dumping, whatever was in our mind, even if it seemed like something not nice about the other person, we just exposed it all. And it has turned into, years later, with a very different, way that we relate to each other, a very linked up mind. And, there isn't really a day where we're not swapping brainwaves about something that's going on. And the reason it's coming into mind right now is that becomes the state of mind of being linked up with the spirit. We can't hide off, as you're saying, we can't partition off our minds and then feel like we're in that flow of oneness. It's all got to be handed over to the spirit. And we learn how to do that in our relationships. We learn how to be vulnerable and to say, you know what, this might hurt, this might end this friendship or this relationship or whatever, but I've got to get honest with myself about how I'm feeling, how I'm operating, not as I'm so selfish, I'm going to just tell you how I'm feeling and, dump everything on you as a victim or whatever. No, as a sense of, I really want to heal my mind. I really, with this person at that time, wanted a different way of relating. And I got it. We're very telepathic. We're very plugged into each other. That sometimes has its own issues, right? Where it's got a little bit of an issue going another way. But we want to go direct. We want to go direct to source. We don't want these, handicaps in our mind. And the compromises are handicaps from being in that flow and in that alignment. It's just that simple. So we deserve to go direct. We deserve to really feel like we're being moved in every moment. It's so lovely to not be stuck in the constant, oh, what should I do? What should I do? What should I do? But there's a certain amount of the purification process that you have to go through where you might not feel great.
Yeah, but, just the thing I'm hearing is everybody wants to be free, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you ask anyone in this world, they want to have a sense of freedom and security. And looking at these compromises and going through them, not being controlled by the thoughts that say, now you have to be something that you're not, that will lead to actual freedom in the mind. There's so much weight that gets dropped off. And I like the nap time news because when you share these dark thoughts that, sometimes you have about other people or yourself or, just giving voice to the things that are in the mind that feel scary to share normally, and you're met with, okay, thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad you got that out of your mind. There's such a deep, real sense of relaxation and space in yourself that comes from that. Yeah, it's an invaluable gift to find someone or other, many people that you can have that kind of relationship with. That is so important. That's the kind of relationships you want, where you can do that, where you can dump the crap out of your mind, not onto them, but dump it to the spirit with them, with the one purpose of clearing it out. We've been shoveling so much snow here. It's been snowing nonstop for a day or two, right? And it's kind of like that, it's kind of hard work sometimes, but you got to do it or you can't leave your house. You'll be stuck.
Yeah, see, go and check out Jake Green in Revolver because, he's in the prison and then he gets out back into the world, so-called free man, and he's still in prison for quite some time until the spirit takes him on the journey of being divested of his attachments. And it's such a great movie. And you'll get to see all the ways that he might like to compromise. But in the end, he gets to the other side of it. And such freedom, such grace, such an amazing journey. So.
Yeah. Yeah. That's your assignment. Go watch that movie.
So.
Yeah.
Grateful to be here with you.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
coming along.
Mm-hmm. See you next time.